So we didn't actually write much down, but the conversation was absolutely incredible, actually, really, really good. So I've got a few prompts here for my team because we didn't write anything down other than our notebooks. Our vision was...
Understand that, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The dance will follow. So overall, it was something around, some keywords more than a coherent vision, but really having a consistent understanding. I think there was a statement made around intersectionality is the work around barriers or understanding barriers. So having a more consistent understanding in our organisations around the barriers amongst decision makers, whilst at the same time taking the short-term actions on representation and participation. So it felt like a two-lane approach that consistently, yes, the mindset's important, but that doesn't mean we have to wait on the more concrete actions and shorter-term actions whilst we're working on the mindset stuff as well.
Perfect, great. That was exactly what we discussed, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. And then we looked at, as we all did, I guess, barriers. And team, just jump in, and I'll take some pauses. But one of the big barriers we thought was actually our leadership teams themselves. If we follow the concept of the shadow of the leader, most of the organisation elements that you see, the subcultures, tribes that you see within the organisation are reflective of the most senior leader heading up that particular part of the business. So we've got to focus, we felt, quite a lot on leaders, but not only. So anything else on leaders? Just jump in.
Yeah.
And then psychological, some of it was around psychological and physical safety. So we don't, all this stuff's very, very well and good, but we do have examples in our own organisations where people have spoken up, have displayed vulnerability, and we know that then they get treated somewhat differently as a result of that, no matter what we say. And perhaps some of that is related to bias as much as anything else. But when people are vulnerable and they open up, there are dangers to that. So we need to make sure that where people have done that, we put extra protection in place. So if they've been promoted, for example, or and they've opened up about something, that actually we don't get rid of them because they didn't make it or they didn't perform. But we've put extra measures in place to make sure that we're supporting their success as much as possible. Anything else you want to jump in with? I can go through the list, but...
Yeah, go through the list. I think the other thing I would add, similar to what we've heard here, is around the business case versus the moral case. We had a real kind of in-depth conversation around what is our role as ED&I professionals and what are we in our organisation to do. And I think we've forgotten that as the years have gone by, and we're leading conversations around data and how ED&I drives performance. And so I think in a lot of the discussion we had, we're taking it back to what is it that we're really trying to achieve here within the workplace.
And some of we've recognised we've created a bit of a rod for our own back, because a lot of the case for getting DEI roles in was, more diverse organisations, better profitability, outperform your, Now the leaders are saying, great, so we've invested in that. Where's the commercial result? So there's a big commercial focus for leadership teams. They want to see the demonstrables, the impact of that. There's also a problem that DEI is still sitting with HR and with the DEI role in particular, when we know that culture belongs to all of us. And as we walk into our organisations every day, we each have a role to play. So we'll come to kind of some solutions we can share. We had some really good ideas, I think, around that. And a lack of accountability connected to that. There's a real lack of accountability around DEI, intersectionality, the culture, even the whole shebang. So we believe that we need to put the right frameworks in place to support people. And ultimately, there can't be accountability if you're not the ones making the decision. If you're not making the decisions, then ultimately you're not accountable. It's a very clear argument. So, any barriers missed before we get into sharing some of the exciting ideas that we've come up with? No? All right, cool. So some of the cool ideas were, we thought, how about one of the last conversations we had was, how about we say, let's recognise a series of the biggest barriers through the organisation. And you can get people you can do some surveys or workshops or whatever to get that through. We've got the buckets of the big barriers. What if we were to say, everyone has to select which barrier I'm going to jump into through various workshops. I'm going to jump into one of those barriers as the potential, as someone that's part of that problem. What if two, on the other side of the barriers, you said that people had to jump in to where they felt that they were someone experiencing those lived experiences, those barriers themselves. And then through a workshop, you've got the two parts of the room. You've got people who are part of the problem, and we all are to some extent, and you've got people who are experiencing that, and to have real honest conversations, well facilitated conversations around how we could turn that into meaningful difference. We had the name. What was a really simple idea around the name to open up conversations, which was
just doing like a little bit of a workshop with teams, asking people about the provenance of their name. So some people in different cultures would have like inherited names. People have changed their names. People have a load of history around just their names. The first thing you hear from a person when you first meet them just has all this power. And that is a really cool exercise of connecting with teams, especially with new starters and stuff like that. You just do something around name stories.
What's in your name? And it's a great little lunchtime conversation or whatever. Look at the provenance of the history of that. And the other idea we had was, why not? A lot of people abbreviate their names where their heritage might not, where they might have a broader heritage. And so I've got a friend that call him Ikwu, but he's got a much broader African name, which I tend to use now. So, or instead of calling Mo, I call him Muhammad, out of respect for his family. It's just little, very tiny things, really.
Just linked to that, when our email signatures for new starters, we encourage people to write their name phonetically, so they feel actually that's acceptable, and it helps people to pronounce their name exactly. It upsets the child. Can you change your name if it's Karen?
Yeah, I saw an absolute to that point. I saw a brilliant post on Insta over the weekend, and it was a post by supposedly Pete Tong, and it had his face, and it says, "Can everyone please stop blaming me for all the problems?" Removing visible detractors is an aspiration. So where you've got people that are very countercultural to what we're trying to do, and where we've got the backing. And they're visibly playing that out in their behaviours to make sure we have the right conversations, but to be brave enough to say we need to remove them from the organisation because they're countercultural.
Yeah, knowing that training isn't really the answer in many cases.
Yeah.
I think the discussion.
Yeah, and then when we're looking at the barriers around recruitment, we had a discussion around some of us ask leaders what experiences they've got around the impact on ED&I from previous organisations. So we thought of maybe bringing in ERGs more to the recruitment process. So when you're kind of at final stage, you've gone through all the kind of skills assessment, you get the ERGs to go on the interview as well.
And they actually make, instead of just being part of the process, we said the manager or senior leader are almost at the beginning part, which is around capabilities, experience and skill set. But the decision making is made perhaps by the ERGs, by the shortlist. Quite interesting, because you see teams, I'm saying, like I've got my learning and development team is mostly full of black people. I've got my data teams are mostly full of Pakistani or Indian folk. And it's just, you look across the organisation, you see these pockets of sameness, even in terms of the marketing people are all like, they're all similar. So it's about driving better, clearer points of difference. And the other thing we said was promotions. What about at the point at which we make promotions, why don't we say, what would they have to complete this in order to get the promotion? No brainer. But what were the barriers that you experienced in getting to this role within this organisation? And what are the barriers that you perceive going forward? We just thought that's great intelligence that could help to build up a bit of a mindset and understanding around what's really going on within the company.
And we also felt that the promotion point is such a critical moment, that using it and thinking, go back to your work, back into the job, that as we do announcements, being a bit more intentional around they got promoted and here's the work that they've done as a role model on inclusion. Because normally it's they improved sales by this, and but actually that's not normally why these people got promoted. We don't promote the best financial performance people. We promote the best leaders, but we don't talk about it in a transparent way. So just trying to be a bit more transparent around why we make promotion decisions.
Right, and only one more for me, and then the team might jump in with other stuff. Is if we are promoting people or hiring people where we know that they're lesser represented. pay even greater attention as an organisation around getting around them to understand what are the potential barriers or challenges that they might face in being a point of difference, and spending real time, quality time around that, and putting in a supportive plan to enable that success. That's it. Anything else? Anything? Because we had so many.
Yeah.
There was a lot of great conversation.
I think you've covered off there.
Okay.
I think so.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Great.